Welcome to Fresh Outlook. I think that was some new music. Pretty cool. The show where we're talking about what you're talking about. I'm your host, Taryn Brill, but just call me TWB. Well, on today's show, we'll begin with that deadly sinkhole, rather, in Florida. Why do sinkholes happen, and is it a sign of a looming water crisis? From there, we'll change gears and tackle civil rights. The Supreme Court is considering a challenge to the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So the question is, are Americans' basic rights in jeopardy? It's ignited a controversial debate, and we'll weigh in. Then we'll discuss one of this week's groundbreaking health headlines, a baby being functionally cured of HIV. It's a medical first, so we'll break it down. And finally, we'll discuss Dennis Rodman, who decided to take a trip to an unlikely place. We'll tell you where and what went down. But first, we're going to start the show with that deadly sinkhole in Florida. Everybody is talking about it. Why do they happen, and are we all at risk? Let's take a look.
Jeff Bush, a 36-year-old landscaper, vanished into the sinkhole that swallowed up his bedroom while he slept. The house is being demolished after being condemned by authorities when soil samples and other data showed that the sinkhole had compromised the ground beneath the home.
The first thing that we had promised the families was that we would do our best to bring as much of the structure forward to the street and then assist them in recovering any of their valuables and things that they wanted to keep. So this is going to be taking it slowly because we don't know, in fact, once we start touching the building itself, whether it'll collapse or whether parts of it will hold up. But we did promise the family we would do our best to help them retrieve whatever they could.
Work crews carefully folded the American flag that hung over the doorway and retrieved family photographs and other keepsakes from the home as it was torn down in stages. 2 nearby homes were also evacuated because of safety concerns. The risk of sinkholes is common in Florida due to the state's porous geological bedrock. As rainwater filters down into the ground, it dissolves the rock, causing erosion that can lead to underground caverns, which cause sinkholes when they collapse.
Obviously, a lot to discuss. Before we get the conversation started, though, let's meet our all-star panel, starting with the lovely Dee Dee. Who are you? Where are you from? And I always like to know why you're here.
Well, I'm here for you, Taryn, of course.
Go on. Cut that out.
And I'm a political and cultural commentator, as well as a former aide to President Bush, and also a blogger.
Terrific. Can't wait to hear your insights. Also, we have Professor Gates joining us. Welcome.
Hi. I'm Alec Gates. I'm a professor of geology and the vice chancellor of research at Rutgers University in Newark.
Professor of geology, you're the guy to talk to about these sinkholes. We also want to introduce another panelist we have joining us from our DC bureau. This is exciting. We have Shamar Bibbins. She's a senior political associate for Green for All. So welcome, Shamar. Good to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's get the conversation started. I'd like to start with you, Professor Gates. Just from a scientific perspective, rather, tell us, why do sinkholes form? I mean, why is this happening all of a sudden? And is it all of a sudden? How long has it been happening? And we're just, not aware of it.
Yeah, well, sinkholes, anytime you undermine the Earth's surface, basically you can make a sinkhole. And that's a lot of times you hear about sinkholes up here in the Northeast. But reality is the real sinkholes occur where you have limestone bedrock. And the entire state of Florida is underlain by limestone.
No
and
kidding.
so if you ever look at the state, like a map of the state of Florida, you'll notice that there's like 1 or 2 rivers in the whole state, and yet it rains all the time. Why? Because all the water goes down under the ground, and all these cave systems that you've all seen, maybe Howe caverns or things like that, basically the water runs underground in rivers, okay? And so instead of being on the surface, all the water is going under the bedrock. And what happens is if you undermine the surface of one of those caves, the top will fall in and you'll make a sinkhole. So basically all you're doing is you're collapsing the surface above one of these caves, and that's what makes your sinkholes.
No kidding. Okay, so I guess the question is, how worried should we be? I mean, I think if you live in Florida, you should be worried.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this is a significant sort of development. Shamar, I want to go to you for a moment. Let's turn the conversation a little bit to sort of water sustainability. And water security. What are your thoughts given this recent sinkhole and the casualty involved?
Yes, the situation that occurred in Florida is really troubling, and we should be concerned in general, not only for folks in Florida, but across the country. We have a resource issue, but we also have an infrastructure issue more broadly. So when you consider that 36 states will anticipate actually water shortages this year, that's concerning. And then we also have our stormwater infrastructure that is being strained by climate change, as well as just in terms of more consumption, not only domestically but also agriculturally. And so our infrastructure, which is already decaying, which we know, is being much more threatened and compromised. And so we have decaying infrastructure as well as a resource scarcity issue. So it's a concern.
Yeah. And I do want to talk about sort of this idea of overusing groundwater and sort of overpumping groundwater. Is that as much to blame, more to blame, less to blame with these sinkhole formations? And then Dee Dee will come to you after we get the scientific angle.
Where really the overuse of groundwater probably doesn't contribute much to the sinkholes.
Oh, no.
No, I mean, the problem is is that you urbanize areas, and when runoff comes from rain, it'll erode much faster. So not so much overuse of water, but more the urbanization, putting out all blacktop and things like that.
But human activity, how much of this is due to human activity that these sinkholes are becoming more and more prevalent?
I'm not sure that they're that much more prevalent, but certainly human activity contributes to it. As I said, in the runoff, floods will erode into these things and open them up faster. If you strip away the natural surface on it, the water can erode it faster. So those sorts of things can actually, and hasten the development of these sinkholes.
Dee Dee, how worried are you about this? I mean, we live in the Northeast. There have been some sinkholes seen in New Jersey, and Harrisburg has been hit. We have yet to be hit, at least from my knowledge, in New York City. But when you hear about this, what are your thoughts in terms of climate change, water sustainability?
Well, I think we need to think about prevention. And you think about, this gentleman that died, that, buried in the sinkhole. He had an inspection 5 months prior. So how could they not catch that? And what are ways of preventing that? And one thing, too, I think is important, that the desalinization, the seawater treatment, that's something I think that would be good to really push. It's expensive, but that's something that's certainly worthwhile because there's lots of seawater. But also, the treatment of limestone, and I just think we need to look at prevention also to what you were saying as far as like the urbanization. When you build, is the ground okay to build on, or are they building on wetlands? Is it safe? So just a lot more attention needs to be put on this, and hopefully out of this tragedy, that'll be a silver lining.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, desalinization. Am I saying it right?
Are we?
That's it.
Okay, say it again?
Desalinization.
Thank you, that's what I said. I wanted to get Shamar's take on it. What do you think about that process, and how much of a threat is that from your perspective, from the green perspective, so to speak?
Well, I think that we should look at the issue from a very holistic issue, and sinkholes are obviously extremely important issue that we need to really pay attention to in terms of urbanization and making sure that we are having the precautions in place so it does not happen. But the greater water issue, I think we need to look at from a groundwater sinkhole perspective, making sure that we're not over developing on areas, but also in terms of scarcity issues and our stormwater infrastructure. The professor spoke about runoff. Our stormwater infrastructure really is being overly stressed, and so we have to make sure that we're investing. We are underly, grossly investing in our stormwater infrastructure, and it's just it's very important that we do that and that we incorporate green infrastructure as we do that, so that we're creating systems that mimic our natural systems. I think that's really important.
Professor, I had a teacher in high school who said that not far off in the future, Florida is not going to exist for many reasons, and I wonder if sinkholes could be contributing to that. How should we all be worried in terms of a global perspective? Who should be concerned about, obviously aside from Florida, who should be concerned about the threat of sinkholes? And how do we solve this? Is there anything we can do to stop them from happening?
Well, anytime you have an area that has limestone in it, and so western New Jersey has limestone in it up in the highlands, and there's some states, you go down to where mammoth caves are in Kentucky, and those are huge areas of limestone. Any place you have limestone, you're going to get the erosion, and you're going to wind up with sinkholes.
So we have Texas, Alabama, Kentucky, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, according to the U.S. Geological Survey.
Right.
So you mentioned this limestone. I mean, it just seems like climate change, acid rain, severe drought, severe storms, it all contributes. So what can we do? I mean, how do we prevent this from happening? Can we?
Well, I mean, as far as getting the sinkholes to stop happening, they're probably going to keep happening. I mean, the biggest problem, the biggest problem with sinkholes, though, is that they open up an opening between the Earth's surface and your groundwater system direct. So normally where you want to kind of filter stuff, you know, you have your sand grains and the water wraps around your sand grains and cleans up. These things open up as big openings in the Earth's surface. Any kind of runoff goes directly into the water table. And if it goes into the water table, then your wells next door are going to be picking up whatever goes in. So they severely compromise your water quality in certain areas. So the water quality in Florida is really under attack these days because of the stuff that's going into those sinkholes.
Okay. So we're obviously, I feel like, just at risk in general, but I want to discuss sort of this crisis we're having with water sustainability. Again, just discussing, just pointing out a little bit more about what Shamar was saying. What do we do about this? This is, I mean, aside from sinkholes, this in general is a growing problem.
It is a huge problem. It's a huge problem out west especially. I talked to a congressman out in California, and he's on the water committee, and he said, you have no idea what's about to happen. I mean, they have got real problems. They do in Florida out west, and we really need to think about it. It needs to be on the forefront. I'm not so sure that we're giving the water problem enough attention. And also, the professor, I had read about the treatment of underground limestone. Does that help? Is there a sort of treatment that would make a difference?
You know, you're talking about the entire state of Florida is underlain by limestone, so that is
That's a big treatment.
Yeah.
Shamar, I want to ask you, just in terms of ensuring our water security, what can we do? What steps can we take?
Well, I think I can't stress enough how I think one of the most important things that we can do in terms of our water security and sustainability is around investing in our water infrastructure. The American Civil Engineer Society gave our drinking water and our stormwater infrastructure a D- in 2009. So that's not really great. So I think we can definitely make sure that we are investing in upgrading our
And how do we do that? I mean, where does it start?
And now we're also
call your congressman. I mean, you know, we talk about these generalizations.
Well, that starts with.
Go ahead.
Well, actually, it's not necessarily a generalization. I think we need to really do some advocacy and put some pressure, making sure that our government is helping to fund our infrastructure. It's critical. It's a security issue. So if our stormwater can't handle the stresses that we're putting on, we're going to either pay later or we can pay now, right? So
I mean, that guy Jeffrey Bush in Florida, he paid for sure. I mean,
I think we better put more money out of solar panels and put it in the
exactly.
water.
So.
Yeah, I mean, we heard President Obama.
So if we don't take care of the...
Go ahead, I'm sorry. We have a delay, just so our viewers know. That's why we keep stepping on each other, but go ahead.
Sorry about that. No, so I was just going to say that not only can we, invest in our infrastructure and help, be on the front side of the problem, we can also make sure, we can create jobs through this. So, it's a win-win situation.
From your scientific perspective, Professor Gates, what do you think we can do in terms of steps? I mean, because Obama did mention it in his State of the Union address. He did bring up climate change, which some people thought they were surprised. They didn't think he'd get to it, but he did. So obviously he cares about it, but we have to do something about this infrastructure. I mean, I'm going to call my congressman on Monday. Frankly, what are you going to do?
Well, I mean, I think that it's obviously having the government help, but I mean, individuals can do things as well. I mean, as you talked about with runoff, I mean, the more things you spray on your lawn, the more stuff goes into your rivers and your lakes, and and overusing water, and watering your lawns every other day, and washing the car every day. I mean, everybody, it really is going to take a global effort of conserving water to really help make this better.
Is that realistic? I mean, the lifestyle, the world we live in today, is that really realistic?
Well, I mean, that's the biggest thing, is that we have to stop using it so much. I mean, right now we have, the conditions out in the Midwest. You talk about California, but, where we've had the droughts in the Midwest. I mean, the aquifer out there is basically a High Plains aquifer. It's a huge aquifer, covers, it's basically in the state of collapse. And once that goes, there's not enough water out there to replace it. So that's our breadbasket.
Right.
We're going to have to really start thinking, carefully about how we use the water supply in the United States.
Well, that said, water supply is, it's throughout the entire country. So, real quickly, is the whole country at risk for sinkholes ultimately, given the trend that exists?
Well, certainly any place with limestone can have sinkholes. That's for sure.
But is limestone not in every state?
No.
Okay.
So it would only be in the places where you have extensive limestone that you're going to wind up with the sinkhole problem. However, the water problem, any place except where you're getting lots of rain and it's a regular rain. You go out to the Pacific Northwest, they probably don't really worry as much about water. But you get in the areas that are dry, and it's a precious resource.
It is a precious resource. Shamar, real quickly, just your final thought on water sustainability.
I think we need to, really push our leaders to invest. I think I agree with the professor. There's a lot of great conservation practices, practical things we can do in our household. Water efficient appliance, just practical things, and making your shower a little less long. And then we also need to obviously continue to work on combating climate change and making sure that we're moving to greener and more sustainable practices across the board so that we can combat climate change.
Every little bit helps. Thank you, Shamar Bibbins. Appreciate your time. All right, great. Dee Dee, thank you. And Professor Gates, thank you. Real quickly, if you live in Florida, do you advise them to get the heck out? I'm serious, and we got to go to break.
Besides the hurricanes.
Would you say?
I wouldn't want to live in Florida.
Okay, you wouldn't want to live in Florida. Okay, I'm canceling my ticket for December break.
Visit.
Thanks, guys, for your insight. We got to go to break. When we return to Fresh Outlook, changing gears, we're tackling civil rights and voting rights, and the Supreme Court is involved. That's next.